Newsroom. Yes, it's time for the France 24 debate. He's back, and he says he's in it to win it.
This is something I never missed, even for a minute. I return in despair to politics, and I'm doing it again because of a sense of responsibility.
At 76, Silvio Berlusconi insists his return has nothing to do with preserving his immunity from all his legal issues. No, it's to save Italy that he's leading his right-wing PDL party in the upcoming elections. He's not sure, though, that voters want him back. Farsa Italia headlined Il Manifesto. Will snap elections signal Berlusconi's swan song? Or that of the outgoing prime minister, technocrat Mario Monti, seen here at opening night at Milan's La Scala Opera. Now, Monti seems to be openly pondering another go. To do that, the former European Commissioner would have to go from unelected consensus caretaker to full-fledged politician entering the fray. Now, also rooting against Berlusconi are these guys, European leaders in Oslo, to collect their Nobel Peace Prize. Behind the smiles, there's worry that in Italy, that bails on its reform commitments will drag down with it the likes of Spain, and dare we say it, the Eurozone as we know it. Today in the France 24 debate, Berlusconi is back, and with us to talk about it from Rome, Senator Luciano Malan of Berlusconi's Parti Popolo della Libertà. Thank you for being with us. Thank you as well to Gregory. Good evening. Thank you as well to Gregory Viscusi of Bloomberg News and Francesco Saracino, senior economist at the French research group OFCE from the University of Aberdeen. We're going to be joined shortly in Scotland by political scientist Andrea Tetti. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. Our hashtag is debate. Markets don't like surprises. And Europe's stocks fell this Monday. Italian 10-year bonds surging to a 3-week high after Silvio Berlusconi's made that weekend announcement to throw his hat in the ring. Gregory Viscusi, the reaction of the markets, was it predictable?
It was predictable, and I wouldn't exaggerate it that much. There's been such a decline in the yield on Italian 10-year bonds that little blip up's really nothing too dramatic. But, I mean, it is worrying. I mean, I'll give you any odds that Berlusconi will not be the next prime minister of Italy. I think we can completely exclude that he will be the next prime minister. But it does just throw one more sort of spanner into the coming elections. And Italy's got a rather complicated election system where it's very difficult to come out of it with a working majority for a single party. And his presence just sort of muddies the water and makes the result just... It makes the possibility of a strong government coming out of the election that little bit less likely.
What makes you so sure that Berlusconi cannot come back in the polls? We're going to look at the polls in a minute, but I mean...
I think people have just had it with him. I mean, it's three times he's been in there. I mean, I think at this point, his natural base has just vanished and gone off to other parties. I just don't think... I just can't see him winning this time. I mean, the polls have been correct in every recent election in all modern Western countries recently. The polls have been spot on, and so I wouldn't. When the polls put his party at 13%, I think we can believe that.
Luciano Malan, do you agree?
Well, I agree that the polls are very low for us currently. Actually, we were losers in 2006. I mean that all the polls said that there was no hope, the gap was too wide. And then what we did is that we did lose, but for 24,000 votes in a country of 60 million people. And at the Senate, we even gained more votes than the center-left coalition in 2006. Now, this time it will be even more difficult, of course. But those who voted for us, and in 2008, and there were more than 37% of Italians, are almost all not going to vote for other parties. They are, in the polls, they are answering that they won't vote or that they are undecided. So if we are able to persuade most of them, a large majority of them, to come back and vote, the match is still open, and we will work hard in order to win.
Indeed, 48% undecided. Berlusconi, he's going to have his work cut out convincing voters. Several polls note a steady drop in the PDL's popularity. But again, it's only now that we're getting into campaign mode at this point. And with 48% undecided, Andrea Tetti, a lot could happen between now and Election Day.
Indeed, it can. And on the one hand, it's true that the polls signal a very great difficulty in Berlusconi actually building up that support, making his support cohesive and transforming it into election day results. But on the other hand, let's remember that the centre-right is fragmented. And also, let's not forget the kind of media influence that Berlusconi has, if nothing else, through the control of a good portion of the press and, of course, of 3 national channels out of 7. So the game is still open. I mean, he has a very high, steep hill to climb, not least in terms of his reputation and the effect of his recent governments. But it's not over yet.
Francesco Saracino, when the current premier arrived, Mario Monti, there was the Italian bond rates that went down, but he's unelected. He's not a politician.
I think that was the problem with the Mario Monti government. He had a positive role in the very beginning, and this positive role was that we had a loss of credibility of Italy, of the government of Berlusconi. We have not to forget that Berlusconi, for many months before November 2011, basically was unable to govern because of fragmentation already at the time within his majority. So when Monti came, it was very good news for Italy because it managed to give back some of its credibility to Italy. The problem, as you said, is that maybe we went a bit too far with the Monti experience, in the sense that after securing the Italian public finances in the very early months of his mandate, he entered into a second phase that was much more political. And then probably it would have been wise to ask the Italian citizens what they thought of the policies carried on, because that is when we started having lots of discontent and the rise of parties like Beppe Grillo.
Beppe Grillo, explain for our viewers who Beppe Grillo is.
Beppe Grillo is a comedian, an excellent comedian, many years ago, who started his campaign, his political engagement with some campaigns on health and the quality of food and against the power of TV and commercials, and slowly grew into an anti-system figure, which is actually collecting lots of the discontent of Italians who are notoriously very often not very into esteem for politicians.
So the protest vote is split between the PDL and Beppe Grillo?
No, I would say that the protest vote is today mostly either in this 48% that you mentioned before of people not voting, not wanting to vote or not being certain, and Grillo. The PDL is not still collecting protest votes, I think.
Gregory Viscusi?
I'd agree with that, and I just don't see that this is a tragedy what's taking place right now. They were going to have to go to the elections anyway by May, so the elections will be moved up by 2 months. The Berlusconi's party was going to present a candidate either anyway, whether it's Berlusconi or Alfano. I don't think makes a huge difference to the numbers. So a technocrat government like Monti is never meant to last that long. If you look at Italy's previous experience with technocrat governments, so whether it was Ciampi or Dini, they lasted a little bit longer than this, but not massive. I don't remember exactly, but what, a year and a half maybe maximum? So, I mean, I think that was always the idea that at some point they would have to, an unelected government can only rule for so long. It was an emergency situation when he came in. We're going to elections now. I just don't see this as being some huge, gigantic, tragic event, which is why we're looking at their market reactions. They just aren't that strong.
Luciano Milan, is it tough nonetheless? Because here you've got a political party. What's its staying power if there is this larger-than-life figure always looming over you? When are you going to have the next generation who can take over?
You mean the public debt?
No, I mean who's going to take over the PDL? If Berlusconi is always able to come back.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, Berlusconi is the candidate for the next elections. He's not the candidate for the next decades. And in the meantime, new persons are growing in the party, and they will have a good role already in these elections, and they will lead the party in the future. But we are facing elections in 2 months probably, and we need to bet on the one who can win, and only Berlusconi can win. As I said, as you have said, it will be very hard for him to try, for us to try, but he's the one who can try. The others would have been able to have enough support, to have enough public recognition. Most of the people don't know them enough, and so we have to bet on the one who can win. That's it.
Okay, so he's the only one with the big name recognition. Right now, Italy again with a consensus government to rein Italy back from the brink was the original concept, as you were saying. Last Friday, the freshly elected leader of the center left, he started the salvos against Berlusconi.
You are irresponsible. You are all irresponsible. And those who hoped that your policies would only have an impact on the lower classes because they are selfish.
The decision of the PDL party is very severe because it puts Italy at risk.
The right thing to do now is to give the Italians the right to rise against the policies put in place to please a German-centric European Union.
All right, so is that kind of the tone on the left? They're going to say, you broke the deal we made, which was to keep the consensus government going, and Berlusconi saying, hey, I'm the only one who can save you from Brussels basically ruling everything we do.
Yes, this is the strange situation in which we are, in the sense that there is certainly a problem today with European policies, which are, I wouldn't say imposed by Brussels, I would say there is a consensus in Brussels that is not working very well for European peripheral countries. And of course, Monti was part of this consensus, and this is why I say there was a certain point at which we had to question whether Monti would be wise to keep Monti in charge, and Berlusconi can play on that.
And is he going to run a campaign that is anti-Europe, basically?
I would guess this is his only chance to make some sufficient noise to get his hopes high.
Is that the strategy, Luciano Malan?
No, well, I think that one should remind, for instance, that Mr. Bersani, that we have heard now, in the first 3 years of this legislature, during the Berlusconi's cabinet, was criticizing Berlusconi's government because of the spending cuts in many sections of the public spending, suggesting that we should have encouraged the economy with a bigger spending. So this is what we are facing. So to depict Berlusconi as the one who is against austerity, against a balanced budget, against the European policies in general, and the others like reliable people, all very much in line with European tendencies of today, is not a true picture of it. Berlusconi is has been engaged in the former government and will be in the next, if he will run the government, to come to a balanced budget. And this is what we worked for, and we were about to get it. Then an economical crisis, as we all know, invested Europe, and not only Europe. And nevertheless, Italy had a deficit lower than most of the other European countries, included France and Germany. Our problem is that we have a huge public debt that we built in the past decades, but our policy was of rigor, of a balanced budget. But what we criticize in what the cabinet of Mr. Monti has done is that it was only a fiscal policy, increase of taxes, spending cuts that hit very much large parts of the population. There were as many as 400,000 people who are at risk of being out of job and and without their pensions because the government didn't care about them. I mean, he changed the laws, not taking on consideration all the accords, all the agreements that had been made between the unions and the entrepreneurs and these people, for instance.
He's not listening. He's not listening to the people. I want to ask Andrea Tetti on this. Is Berlusconi Eurosceptic, or, as Luciano Malan says, just working for a better deal?
I think Berlusconi is Eurosceptic if it serves his purposes. I think that the portrayal that we've had from your previous speaker is interesting in terms of the representation of Berlusconi's line of attack during the electoral campaign, which is officially open effectively now. But it's pretty far from the truth. I mean, Italy's problems are structural, and unfortunately they have a lot to do with issues that Berlusconi himself, in the several times that he was in government, never tackled. In fairness, neither did the left. So we're talking about, for example, the value of corruption in Italy is estimated, the lowest figures that I've seen, at 60 billion euros per year. The value of tax evasion is around about 120 billion. I mean, these are around about just under half the size of the original European Stability Mechanism as a whole. These issues have been the ones that Berlusconi never tackled, the left never tackled, and Monti didn't tackle. So if you look at, for example, the poll ratings that Monti has had, initially, quite rightly, he was very high up. He was basically not Berlusconi and a technocrat, so that justified those poll ratings. But as his government failed to tackle deeper structural issues, I think the fall in poll ratings reflects those kinds of difficulties. So Berlusconi has the difficulty of trying to disentangle himself from what he did before. And unfortunately for him, I think Italians, and the polls currently reflect this, Italians don't have that short a memory.
All right, when we come back, we're going to look at Mario Monti's own ambitions. Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.